Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome to this global debate session. My name is Henry Anumudu, and I am the head of strategic communication at Teach for All. And I'm really excited to be moderating today's global debate, a unique format that moves beyond conventional discussions and brings a blend of perspectives in an engaging, fast-paced way. Our debate statement for today is standardized SEL programs ignore cultural differences and can be harmful in diverse settings. Each of our panelists will take a position either in support of this statement or against it. But before we begin, let me provide some context on our debate format. The global debate uses clear and thought-provoking statements instead of questions. This approach helps us dig deeper into difficult conversations and also explore various viewpoints and challenge each other's ideas. It is important to mention that although that the global debate to be presented today may not reflect the personal opinion of the organizers or the Global Citizenship Foundation. Additionally, our panelists were only assigned their positions a few hours before this session. So while they will argue passionately, they may not personally or professionally agree with the positions they've been given. So what we're going to be engaging today, this global debate format encourages our panelists to think on their feet and present compelling arguments, even when defending a stance they may not fully support. It challenges us to step outside of our comfort zones and also look at an issue from multiple perspectives. So that said, here's how our debate today will proceed. We will have 5 rounds lasting a total of 30 minutes, with each panelist getting 2 minutes per round. But we'll also have the option of a 6th round, but that will depend on the time we have left. So after the debate round, we'll then move into a 20-minute Q&A session where panelists can respond freely to audience questions or my questions without being tied to their assigned positions. As a reminder, our debate statement is standardized SEL programs ignore cultural differences and can be harmful in diverse settings. Daniel, our first panelist, will argue in favor of this statement, while Monisha, our second, will argue against it. But before we begin, I'd like to invite each of our panelists to introduce themselves and provide some context on their work, as well as their personal and professional connection to socio-emotional learning. Daniel, I would love to invite you to go first. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Daniel Mneze. I'm from Rwanda. I'm a sector-based mentor in charge of training other school-based mentors. I'm also a school-based mentor in one school called GS Kame Presbyterian. I'm also a senior teacher, teach in a secondary school. I learned mathematics and physics with education, but I did also the coaching and the mentoring in the University of Rwanda College of Education. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Monisha, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Henry, and good to meet you, Daniel. I'm Monisha Datta. I am from a place known as Dehradun, which is in Uttarakhand in India. I'm running a boarding school, so diversity and standardizing things to manage diversity is something that is very close to my heart. It's not just in my profession that I see diversity. As I was growing up, I have been to different places. My education is all across the globe. So sometimes it's nice to understand that for me, diversity and speaking on this topic is very close to heart. It is something that I passionately feel about. So thank you for having me on this debate panel, and looking forward to our discussions.
Thank you so much, Manisha. This is, I know we just had a full-blown introduction, and it's also helpful to hear again how diversity play an important role in your experience. And Daniel as well, it's also great to hear how, you've been involved in coaching students on the ground. Now, let's move into our conversation. Again, as I mentioned, we're going to have 5 or 6 rounds. You will have 2 minutes on each round. And here again, our question is, standardized SEL programs ignore cultural differences and can be harmful in diverse settings. Daniel is supporting the statement, Manisha is against it. Daniel, I will allow you to go first.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, respected judges and esteemed opponents, and all those present today, I stand before you to discuss a matter of great importance and relevance, the role of social and emotional learning in today's diverse educational landscape. The motion before us stated that social emotional learning ignores cultural differences and can be harmful in diverse settings. This may seem to hold some truth on the surface, I firmly believe that with proper implementation, SEL programs are adaptable, cultural, inclusive, and indeed beneficial to students of all backgrounds. Today, I demonstrated how SEL programs not only respect but actively embrace the culture of diverse, equipping students with universal valuable skills to live in a global world. My goal is to show that rather than ignore cultural differences, SL programs build understanding and the impacts that connect students from all the walks of life. The first point that I can focus on is social and emotional learning programs often reflect a Western-centered bias. This one, most SL programs are designed based on Western culture norms, which emphasize individualized open expression of emotion and assertiveness. These values are not universal and may clash with collectivist culture where harmony, respect for others, and emotional restraints are prioritized. By imposing a one-size-fits-all approach, social and emotional learning programs fail to respect and acknowledge this diverse culture. For instance, students from culture
Thanks,
that
Daniel. I didn't mention this, but I'm going to be coming in when the 2 minutes is up.
This is one. For instance, students from culture that's
Daniel, your 2 minutes is up. We're going to let Manisha respond to you. Manisha, please.
Thank you.
You're on mute, Manisha.
Thanks, Daniel. I do understand when you say that it is important for a non-standardization of it, but I kind of disagree with this statement in the sense that when we talk about SEL, we're not talking about cultural, anything to do with culture. We're talking about teaching them the skills, teaching them skills such as self-awareness, handling conflict, being empathetic towards each other's needs. So those skills, any which way, are keeping everything else in mind. Standardizing SEL helps students to find a common ground. They work on a common ground and they can kind of, it fosters unity among them. It helps the teachers to design it into their curriculum and standardize everything so that the behavior, respecting, being patient, being tolerant, being okay with diversity is something that is actually interweaved in the skills that are taught in social and emotional learning. So it does not matter which culture a student comes from, a background a child comes from. it allows the student or the people handling those students to accept and behave in a certain way, which is a standardized way, irrespective of where they're coming from. So this also helps the teacher to focus on deliverance, especially in today's time where there's so much of migration happening. There's so many different cultural see, everyone is not aware of the cultural diversities. So it's SEL is not there to teach about the cultural diversities. SEL is to teach the skills, to make them more empathetic and make them more stable. So it is important for SEL to become standardized so that it can be delivered across the globe in the same manner. And it's a language. It in itself becomes a language of understanding. It helps in developing emotional skills. It helps in developing interpersonal skills. Because when we talk of SLE, the 5 prime things that we are talking of, skills we are talking of, one of them
Thank you,
is
Monisha.
also making responsible decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is our first round of, interesting arguments marshaled already. We're going to move into the second round, and Daniel, again, you will lead. Just Monisha has said, when we talk about SEL, we do not talk about culture, but skills that are universally applicable. I wonder if you want to respond to that, Daniel. Round 2. Daniel, please.
Let me go to the other points. It's misinterpretation of cultural driven behavior as deficiency. When standards are developed without cultural awareness, behavior aligned with specific cultural practice can be misinterpreted as social and or emotional deficiencies. For example, let me give you an example. Students from some Eastern Asia culture may avoid direct eye contact out of respect, but in a necessary program that interprets eyes contact as a sign of confidence, this student may be misjudged as shy or disengaged. By ignoring culture context, SEL program can reinforce bias and stereotypes, reading indicators to perceive culturally driven behaviors as problematic rather than as expression of cultural identities. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. I'll let Monisha respond.
So I'm going to take this forward from what Daniel just said about the eye contact. Yes, in some cultures, eye contact maintaining is considered to be confidence and you being very out there and acknowledging the other person, whereas it may not be considered the same in the other cultures. Completely acceptable, but at the same point of time, when we talk about SEL, we're talking about teaching them how to read the body language also. So when a child or an individual is making an eye contact and you can sense that they are not comfortable with giving you an eye contact back, you are kind of patient about handling that situation. You are okay with the idea of not pushing the child across those borders and saying, no, if you're not making eye contact, this is not right. So another important skill when we talk about SEL, we are talking about actually teaching them the skills. And one of those important skills is have understanding relational, developing relational skills. So when you are teaching them how to make relations, how to manage relations, you're automatically giving them the tool to manage different people, because not everyone is going to be of the same temperament. So understanding the body language, whether that's comfortable or not comfortable, also becomes a part of an SEL. And when we are standardizing it, we are saying, whatever be the case, if a child shows this kind of a behavior or a tendency, means they are not feeling comfortable. Look at the entire thing in totality, not just. And again, coming back to the cultural thing, people in different cultures also behave differently. So you cannot just say that just because they come from that background. Like in India, we see so much of diversity. You cannot, say, okay, all Indians behave in a certain way. They don't. Not all states behave in the certain way, and not many cities in the same state behave in the certain way. So you have to allow them to standardize it so that they can deliver it in a better space. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much, Manisha. And again, just for the sake of any members of our audience joining the conversation just now, I want to emphasize as well that this debate is fast-paced. It's meant to look at the topic from different perspectives. So the position of Daniel and Monisha today, we're just giving to them a few hours before this conversation. So they may not personally or professionally agree with these positions, but we are just engaged in an intellectual conversation to try to unveil what SEL, universally applied or culturally adapted, means for us. And now we are heading into our third round of debate. Daniel, please, your argument.
Thank you again. Another point, it is ignoring systemic and the societal challenge. SEL programs often emphasize individual responsibility and self-regulation without addressing to broader social challenges and the systemic issues that shapes without addressing or with, for example, student lives, particularly for those from marginalized or underserved backgrounds. These students may face discriminations, economic hardship, or trauma, which affect their social and emotional development in ways SEL programs fail to account for. By ignoring this external reality, SEL places under responsibility on students, implying that they alone are at fault for their struggles, which can be deeply harmful and lead to feeling of alienation. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. Monisha, do you want to respond to that?
Yes, I would love to respond to that. So when we talk about SEL, we are talking about teaching social and emotional learning to all. We are not segregating and saying that ones who come from a certain background are only supposed to be learning these skills. These skills are meant for all. So when we talk about social and emotional learning, the skills that we are trying to teach them are also how to understand their emotions, how to comprehend their emotions, and how to communicate their emotions. And when you are teaching these skills to the people who are coming from marginalized background also, they themselves are able to comprehend and accept, manage, and handle. So it allows them to communicate how they feel across the board and not take what the other person is saying, not take it personally. Even they develop the skills to understand that if a person is coming from a different background, the possibility is they do not understand how we feel. They can communicate their feelings. They can be more expressive. So when we talk about SEL, we are talking about two major skills. One is learning to understanding their own feelings and communicating it. One is being an active listener. And when I come back to listening, I'm not only talking about the listening that comes from verbal expression, listening that comes from visual expression also. When you look at a person and you can make out, when you can comprehend that, oh, this is not something that's making this person comfortable or happy. So it's SEL is something that is across the board, and it is for all. And the moment, and again, it's my view, and the moment we standardizes, the personalization finishes. So nobody is going to get a preference over the other. Expression of emotions are not going to get personalized. It's going to be a standardized thing. You expect to understand and you expect to be understood. It's a two-way street.
Thank you so much, Monisha.
Thanks, Andre.
We are at the third round now. We just finished the third round, and I want us to, stop for a moment to breathe. And I want to send a note to all the audience watching us now. So please, if you have any questions, please put it in the chat box. And we have a 20-minute segment at the end to discuss your questions and respond to it as well. Just to give a brief rundown of the interesting conversation that has been happening so far, we've heard Daniel from the very start argue that SEL is often Western-centric and might clash with the values of our individual cultures. And we see Monisha so beautifully argued that when we talk about SEL, it is not about cultures, but also about implementing certain skills that can be universally effective. And Daniel came back and said SEL often marginalizes students from certain cultures. And Monisha, again, with her argument on skill, said that it actually helps us build relational skills that can help us read emotional cues across different cultures. And just now, Daniel also came back and said SEL places the need to solve structural challenges on individual students, right? And Monisha again says it's not just about one student, but all students learning this together in order to change their context and their countries. This has been a really interesting conversation. I can't wait to see how our subsequent round goes. Again, just as a reminder, our debate statement for today is standardized SEL programs ignore cultural differences and can be harmful in diverse settings. Daniel is supporting this stance, while Monisha is arguing against it. Again, these positions were only assigned to our panelists a few hours before this conversation. They may or may not agree with these positions professionally. So let us move right into our fourth debate round. Daniel, please, what is your argument, as usual, in support of the statement?
Thank you. Another point that can support this statement is this one: conflict with family and the community values. These SL programs often emphasize certain behaviors and mindsets that may conflict with students' home environments. For example, promoting assertiveness and the personal success might clash with cultural values that emphasize community well-being over individual achievement. When students are encouraged to adopt beliefs that differ from their family, this can lead to confusion, resentment, and even tension within families. Furthermore, students may experience identity conflict, feeling pressured to behave one way at school and another at home, leading to internalized stress and a weakened connection to their culture roots. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Monisha, please.
Thank you, Daniel. Okay, so I come back again with this point that when we talk about standardization, I can see Daniel smile. Laugh, actually. So when we talk about standardization and, yes, being assertive and not being assertive, different cultures, different feelings. But today we're talking about a global world. We're talking about globalization. We're talking about intercaste, interstate, intercountry, inter-religion, all kinds of weddings. So if there is no acceptance to being assertive or not being assertive, it will create a problem. That's where conflicts get created. The moment we standardize something, I personally feel we are creating a much more inclusive environment, because inclusivity means you're tolerant to diversity. You're tolerant to the viewpoints of the other people. And when you standardize things and you say, okay, fine, it is okay, you understand that this is how it works. You're teaching them skills to work in collaboration. You're teaching them skills for acceptance. You're teaching them skills to be more tolerant of the diversity that they see around them. So automatically, it allows them to be in a much more peaceful space. Acceptance doesn't happen unless and until you are okay with the idea of one person being assertive and me not being assertive, right? So it's not about, see, when we talk about SEL, we're not about talking about merging cultures. We're talking about accepting cultures. We're talking about the diversity that exists and completely open armed. You're saying, okay, welcome. Diversity is actually welcome. So when you standardize all the skills that you want to teach across the globe, everyone is speaking the same language. Everyone is empathetic. Everyone is ready to resolve conflicts. Everyone is handling things from a non-ego background. Everyone is able to communicate. Everyone is able to or ready to understand. And the most important of it all is everyone is ready to tolerate and accept. So that
Thank
helps when
you.
you standardize.
Thank you so much, Manisha. Yeah, okay. I have certain comments, but I'm going to leave that till the end, right? Because now we are heading into our very final round, which is the fifth round. Daniel, are there any closing statements that you want to make to wrap this up?
Yes, I have another poetry that can support.
Go on, please.
Let me go on. Monica, may understand something. We've said that this event is a standard. It can be harmful. This is what I'm supporting. The last one is this one: risk of implicit bias in assessment and the outcomes. SL assessments, if not culturally adapted, can reinforce implicit biases, leading to unfair labeling of students. When these assessments are based on narrow definition of social and emotional competence, students from different backgrounds may be disproportionately identified as needing improvement simply because their cultural expressions don't align with the programmer's standards. This can lead to students feeling discouraged, unfairly personalized, and unable to achieve success in SL simply because their cultural expression don't match the programmer's expectation. Thank you again.
Thanks so much, Daniel, for taking the conversation right into the realm of assessment. Manisha, how would you respond to that?
So my statement to that would be, you know, when we talk about SEL, we are actually creating a consistent framework. We're creating a framework that ensures that each and every student that you're dealing with, and again, I'm using the word all. When we talk about standardizing it, we are saying there's a consistent framework that allows all the students to learn the vital or the most important social and emotional skills. So we are also saying they are learning the social skills. They're not learning about art and culture of the society because there are other subjects to teach them that, right? But they are learning the social skills. Acceptance is a part of a social skill. Not showing your displeasure is a part of a social skill. And when we are standardizing it, when we are creating it, we are actually creating a framework. And when you create a proper standardized SEL program, you're focusing on universal skills such as empathy. You're talking about handling all kinds of displeasures and conflicts that get arisen. And this is when you're talking about conflict resolution. I think that is the most important thing in today's date and time when it comes to the cultural diversity across the borders, across boundaries, and you're teaching them these skills. You're teaching them the ability to handle these conflicts in the right positive way. So standardization is helping you create a framework and making all the students come at the same platform irrespective of where they're coming from.
Thank you so much, Manisha, and thank you,
Thank
Daniel.
you.
We've come to the end of that debate segment, and we're going to be moving into the Q&A shortly. So if you're in the audience and you have some questions for Monisha or Daniel, please put it in the chat box. But this has been a really interesting conversation so far. Just to to kind of reflect on what we heard during that fourth and fifth round again, it was interesting to hear Daniel talk about how, SEL, universally applied, can actually conflict with cultural and also family values in terms of, when we amplify personal success that might clash with community or family success, and also then ultimately create some sort of an identity dissonance. But I also love your argument, Monisha, in terms of saying it's a globalized world, and we need the skills to be tolerant, but also to be able to accept others and their values and their culture and their family and way of being and way of living. And then we, dove into the assessment aspect as well that you both just marshaled beautifully. So as I wait for the questions, I'm going to ask you both this question. And now you don't need to hold to your original assigned position now. Feel free to come from your own expertise, your own experience with work on the ground. And my question is, if a country, right, any country, and Monisha, you've spoken really well of how we're now in a really globalized world where in certain contexts you have people from different cultures, different parts of the world coming and sitting in one classroom or in one education system. Now, if a country with significant cultural diversity decide to implement a nationwide SEL program, what would be your top recommendation to balance this standardization and cultural inclusivity at the same time? How would you approach this? Monisha, do you want to take this question first?
So when something like this, what you're just talking about, comes into place, I think the first thing they need to do is introduce the art and culture in the subjects like social studies, in the geographical classes, in the historical episodes that they talk about, and it should be spoken to all. It should not just be a part of one. Talk about art, visiting museums and visiting. So add the art and culture of the various immigrant, like all the different people that they are dealing with. That should become a part of the history. That should become a part of the geography. And then once you've got all that, they should concentrate on teaching them the different value systems that come along with it. Right? Each country, each space, each community has their own value systems that they talk of. And we're not talking about what's right and wrong. We're just saying, okay, this happens and this happens and this happens and this happens. Now, talking about tolerance, merging it all back into the fact that each and everything is an acceptable norm. This is not right. There's no right and wrong. Half of our wars in life are because we believe in something and we do not believe in something. So it's all about the right and wrongs. And actually, there's no right and wrong if you look at it. There's certain social norms. Accepting those social norms and placing things on a diverse platform will become much easier for them if they want to implement a standardized SEL program. So understanding cultures comes into the curriculum. You just put those topics into the curriculum, into the relevant subjects. Get them to read literature of different authors, different genres. And automatically you are giving them a window into the space that exists outside their own country.
Yeah, thanks so much, Manisha. That's so beautifully said. And I would love to push this question to you, Daniel. What would be your approach to redesigning SEL programs to make them more adaptable to different cultural contexts or expressions? What are some of the best strategies you want to do to make SEL adaptable to different cultural contexts?
Thank you. You have to create supportive and inclusive educational environment. SEL must respect and integrate cultural diversity A true effective SEL program would embrace this cultural nuance and make all students feel seen, understood, and valued rather than pushing a similar worldview that harms the very students it aims to support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And I think we have one question from the audience that should be posted on screen now. And the question says, how might standardized SEL program contribute to or hinder the cultural identity of students with different background, especially those that may seem racist? Who wants to approach this question? Manisha, do you want to try that out?
Okay. What happens when you have a standardized SEL program? It contributes or it hinders depends upon how it is executed. Like any other program, it's the execution that matters. It's not the paperwork that is there. If we are talking about a standardized SEL system, could I have the question back on the screen for a second? So, especially when we're talking about like wherever there are racist remarks and all, it is, I come back to that same point. By the end, you have to incorporate SEL as a system in which everyone understands the needs of the others. They know what is the right way of communication. Will that particular statement hurt anyone or not hurt the other person? So when you're standardizing these things, the accepted norms become a part of the language. And whether the cultural identity does not matter. By the end, if everyone is talking the language of love, is emotionally aware of what is happening around, it does not matter how you dress, what you say, what you eat. Your acceptance towards that becomes higher. So standardizing is basically time and again the same point, that it is teaching the skills that are important. And those skills are building relationships. Those skills are handling conflicts. Those skills are making right decisions, speaking, communicating. Those are the skills that we are talking of. And if we are putting those skills in place and doing it on constant and a continuous base, I think we'll be in a better position to be handling any kind of a situation that arises. Actually, situations won't arise. You'll be in a much more peaceful world.
Thanks so much, Manisha.
Thank you.
Daniel, I wonder if you have any comments to make on this question so far.
No other comment. No other comment.
Okay. We have a few more questions from the chat. We're going to have them pop on the screen now. How can parents help to play a role in shaping SEL programs for their children? Daniel, I wonder if you want to approach this question as well, also coming from your own work coaching children and students on the ground.
How can parents help to play a role in shaping SEL programs for their children? First of all, as I said, this SEL program should, or it may be, supportive and inclusive in the environment. For example, when a parent didn't include, or but let me say that the government or the country may involve or may connect the culture and these SL programs. They may connect them and train parents about this curriculum of SL, train together both parents and the children.
Thank you, Daniel. Monisha, I want to hear your perspective on that as well. How can parents help SEL?
So actually, parents are the first teachers, and the children, they learn the maximum when they're 0 to 3 years of age, where there is no other adult dealing with them but the parent. So how they can teach them SLE is by modeling it, by being empathetic towards it, by communicating and telling them what upsets them and what makes them happy, by making them understand, by talking to them rather than setting rules. You know, most of the parents, the biggest mistake they make is they think that it is, I have said so, so you have to do it. The whys are not really entertained. And it's a very conflicting thing that when the children are actually in that talkative age, most of the parents are too occupied in their profession to pay attention to active listening and communication, right? And when they are not being empathetic towards the children, when they are being passive listeners, or when they're not communicating how they feel, I'm hurt, and my child comes and asks me, how are you feeling? I say, I'm okay. They take it as a norm to say okay, irrespective of how they feel. So when we are handling the children at that age, when they are the most receptive and we're not communicating with them, we're missing out on teaching them the SEL. And when they become teenagers and they've anyway learned all those skills from us, we're expecting them to respond now in the way that we want them. We want to know what they are learning. We want to know what they're doing. They're no longer in that zone. They've adapted our passive listening as a part of their regular life. And they would rather communicate with the ones who would listen to them. So it is very essential for parents to role model what they expect the children to learn. Handling conflict, or building relations, or managing families. Oh, they have a huge platform to do whatever they feel like. And they're always teaching the students, their own children, that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manisha. And that's beautifully said. And we actually have one last question from the audience before we begin our wrap up. Please, Tech would put that up on the screen in a minute. Can you share experiences on implementation of SEL programs as an educator? That's an interesting question. I wonder, Daniel, how have you gone about implementing SEL programs as an educator in your school, in your context?
Thank you. During my journey, during my journey in the of education, I can say that I found that collecting this SL program so that they are based on the values of our culture, it helps us to develop children in a sustainable and and this allow this student to have a sense of self and the ability to think and solve problems, which goes hand in hand with the long life and the culture. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that's all the questions from the audience. But just before we do that, Monisha, do you have a different perspective or a different approach to how you implement SEL within your own context?
Thank you for that question. So, what we have been trying and doing is we do a lot of story reading sessions where the children are reading about different cultures. We start with folk tales because that's the best way to interest anyone. And then we have the person who comes from a different background. We always have mentors who we expect to create the maximum amount of trouble. So we give that child the responsibility to ensure that the student that has come from a different background feels the safest. Make them aware of and tell the other student to share stories about what happens in their space. It's basically something that is actively done. There is a buddy system that we follow for it. We also teach them. So I'm a life skills coach. So we also teach them the importance of understanding their feelings and managing, not controlling their feelings. They all maintain a diary, a gratitude diary, which they are with. Everyone has to mention what are they thankful for by the end of the day. There may be 10 things that have gone wrong, but I'm sure there's one thing that went right. And every time you feel sad, you're supposed to go back and read that diary, right? So slowly we ensure that each and every child becomes emotionally aware. They're aware of their own feelings, and they're aware of how to handle the society around them. And that's what we have been trying to practice over the last many years. Thanks.
Thank you, Manisha. I just got a message that we have one last question that just came in from the audience. So I'll allow Tech to put that on screen.
Okay.
Okay. That's not coming up, but
it's coming up. It's there.
Okay. That sounds more like
statement.
A statement
yeah.
than a question. But let me try and reshape that to something we can respond directly to. Maybe we can maybe think about it as to really address that question of how does this a student's cultural existence actually affect the implementation or the design of SEL programs. Now, outside the debate we just did, can we, answer that question from our perspective? Manisha, do you want to go first, since you actually stood against that in the debate just now? I want to hear your own expertise, your own experience on that question.
So, yes, students perceive themselves targeted the moment they do not come from that same background or that same culture. On very, very small things, there is a lot of conflict that gets arisen. So and so said this to me, and so and said did this to me, or they looked at me in a certain way. So there is a lot of work that evolves around in making them safe in that zone, where they feel threatened if it is not a part of their culture. So when students have a very deep relation with their culture, the possibility of handling that gap becomes a little more intense. It's not that you can't do it, it's just that you have to bridge the gap by getting the student on the other side feel less threatened. It's all about making them feel safe. So the connection is deep. If the connection is deep, then the work involved in the SEL is more. It's actually a fact. You have to do a lot of extra work. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Manisha. We've heard Manisha in the first part of this conversation, argue for universally applicable SEL programs, but it's so good to hear her talk about the facts, right now. I'll allow Daniel, you've spoken about this the whole session, but I want you to, maybe give a closing statement about how SEL programs, whether it's design and implementation, actually connect to students' cultural existence.
Thank you. In order for this program to be useful, it is important that they can be proved according to the culture of the place where they are going to be used. For example, using stories based on the history and culture of any country, or working together, or together we would increase the students' as a sense of culture and unity. In addition, giving teachers a role in the preparation of this program would make the content more relevant to what students face in their daily life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel and Manisha. We've come to the end of our conversation today. And I will just remind everyone again of the debate statement we've been engaged with for the past 1 hour, which is standardized SEL programs ignore cultural differences and can be harmful in diverse settings. Daniel had supported this statement throughout the course of the conversation, while Monisha has been against the statement. But both of them have made quite compelling cases that actually prompt us to consider a balanced approach, one that upholds the universal value of SEL while also recognizing and responding to cultural differences to enhance our impact. As we close, I encourage all of us to reflect on how we can take the lessons from today's debate into our work and conversations. Whether you lean one side or the other, this dialogue reminds us of effective educational practices that, you know, they often thrive on nuance and openness to adapt and learn. And again, thank you to our panelists for their thoughtful contributions and to our audience for your engagement. The conversation doesn't end here. I hope we're taking what we've learned today and we're continuing to question, to innovate, and advocate for educational systems that truly serve every learner. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Monisha.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.